G'day reefers, and thanks for tuning in to Gallery Aquatica TV. Welcome to another episode of the Frag Files, taken from the prop room. Today we're going to feature Dallas Acropora. You may remember this Dallas Acropora from Cam's last video on the bar reef. Now he was harvesting this piece in this huge colony because it was growing literally out of the aquarium. And today we're going to show you how to make multiple frags from this colony. Also, I'm going to cover some of the history of Dallas Acropora and why it is such an iconic Australian acro on our reefing scene. So fragging Acropora or other branching SPS actually isn't that challenging. So let me run you through some of the tools that we've got prepared to make the job as easy as possible. First, we prepare a bucket where we are soaking frag plugs. The function of soaking frag plugs helps to remove some of the air bubbles that get trapped inside the porcelain. Now when you put glue down, if you haven't done this, the bubbles will end up being trapped under the glue, and then you get these irregular kind of ugly bubbles in your glue, and it could even inhibit the sticking process. The most important thing obviously is to have a nice sturdy bunch of coral snips. You can use coral cutters, bone cutters. I like to use these, but we do also have a range including crescent cutters if they're really, really thick, and some dip buckets. So with Acropora, I like to use an iodine-based dip. This helps heal the tissue. It also prevents any infection spread. The Seachem Reef Dip is what we will be using here today. What you may also want to have on hand as a secondary dip is something for parasites. There are a few flatworm treatments out there, of course. Unfortunately, the Dallas Acropora is incredibly susceptible to acro-eating flatworm, so we are going to use a bucket with Melafix just in case, just to have one extra level of security. Also, we've got our frag rack on which we're going to position our frags, and our favorite glue, the Ecotech CG. So we've got all the gear ready to go. Let's get cutting. I'm going to get the tiles out just so they can dry. We're going to take a few different sized frags of the Dallas today. We like to sell them fairly cheap for the small frags, and you know, with increasing price depending on size. So we'll just get these ready just in case. We've got our Dallas soaking here. Now it does slime up. You could even put a bit of carbon in the bucket if you're concerned about some of this slime. I like to keep one hand glove free when I'm dealing with propagating corals which aren't toxic. This glove is very helpful in case it was anything sharp, but really it's pretty easy. We've got the frag plugs there. Having a towel on hand is always really useful. And so I'm just going to cut these up into manageable pieces. I guess you really want to keep it attractive, and just to position it easier, because we're using flat tiles, we're going to cut as flat a base as possible. When you're dealing with staghorn corals like this, you may get lost as to which way was up. For the purpose of the actual health of the frag and growing out, it doesn't really matter too much, but you may want to position them in a particular order and an alignment so that you know the base goes this way of how it grew in naturally towards the light. So we try not to keep the corals out of water for too long. Ooh, that's a tough cut. Lucky I've got good coral snips. And something like this, because I don't use power tools, I would probably leave that as is in the way. It's actually got a shaded side and a lit side. Sometimes the Dallas stag will actually grow side on, so we may even position that in sideways and see how those acro frags grow. So while I'm doing this, I really wanted to share with you the legend that is, why do we call this Dallas Acropora? So there's a couple of rumors, a couple of stories that get around amongst the reefing community, but last year I did quite an extensive amount of research trying to get to the bottom of this story. So Dallas Warren was a hobbyist that was incredibly popular on the scene 20 or so years ago, and he found this coral at Coburg Aquarium in 1997. Bought it for $30 as a frag. He said it was greeny brown, and he had a lot of connections around Australia amongst the reefing community. It grew in an enormous rate, up to 1 centimetre a month. This coral is apparently encrusting. He split his frag into 5 and sent a piece to each state in Australia, to friends all around Australia, and they called it the Dallas Acro. So some people think it's called Acropora Dallas warreni, and over those years everyone has tried to identify the correct species for this coral. What's interesting, Dallas himself thought it was called Acropora microphthalma. Not long after, there was some speculation that it might have been Acropora youngii. But in 2001, a piece of the tissue was actually sent for DNA sample testing, and it came back as being the closest to Acropora valida, which we know is like a purple stag with green polyps. And interestingly, over the years that this piece has been shared, it does actually change habit a little bit in other people's aquariums and color. So sometimes it's a very green kind of a pigment all the way, the base tissue and the polyps. Sometimes it really does have a very purple appearance in the base. And a very interesting form that we've had before, we call it Christmas Dallas, just for fun, because over the encrusting base, it actually will get a red polyp, like a rusty red polyp. And it becomes a bit contentious, I guess, because people start to argue that it's not Dallas or it's not the same Dallas. But really, amazingly, all the Dallas around Australia in everybody's reef tanks has actually been shared by Dallas Warren himself. I'm ready to put my glue down now, and we're actually going to try something really interesting. There is a theory that was told to us at the MACA conference in Cairns in 2017, whereby the researchers from CSIM in Townsville were stating that they ran some tests on the growth rates of Acropora, and they actually discovered that the axial tip doesn't grow as efficiently as putting it on its side, snipping the axial off. So I thought it'd be really interesting to follow this theory and glue them side down. I'm making sure that the photosynthetic side is facing up. So in about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, we're going to be able to compare the axial tip growth to the side sausage growth. So I guess the theory here is that these corallites are going to turn into axial corallites, and the growth should be pretty much enhanced to grow upward towards the light to take that energy, take advantage of the energy. The radial corallites are generally functioning more so, I suppose, to capture food, but in this way they're all going to start branching to maximize exposure to light, whereby usually the first kind of goal of an Acropora frag is to maintain stability. So you will get that growth, that encrusting growth first, especially in aquariums where there's a really high flow, which is quite perfect for Acro, of course. So people are often saying, oh, I frag my Acro, but you know, I'm just getting this encrusting growth. I'm not actually getting any branches. And it's likely that once the colony has invested energy into maintaining stability, that is when then it will invest in starting to create branches and grow upward to the appropriate light. I can't wait to check these out. Dr. Dallas Warren said they grow 1 centimeter a month, so hopefully we get that kind of result as well. Now, I did mention it was incredibly easy making Acropora frags, and I don't have too many secrets to divulge here from a professional propagation standpoint. However, there is one trick I use for branching coral that I think can be quite helpful to share, and that is using a prop. I use anything that's around, to be honest. Bottles, medication, small glue, but I do find styrofoam and something like magic sponge to be incredibly efficient at this idea. So I've got my gel glue ready, and you position the frag so it's attractive, and you use the prop to take the weight while it's out of water. Sometimes, you know, your initial plan may not work because it's not as flat based as you'd hoped, but thankfully the CG doesn't have a very long set time. This ends up being a very attractive appearing frag from the get-go, whereby if you glued these kind of sausages upright, to be saleable or appealing, you really have to wait until the tissue grows all the way over the cut bit, which is fine. I mean, there's no need to be in any kind of a hurry, but this way it sort of starts it off on a beautiful appearance from the beginning. You can nearly use anything to prop like that, but you know, you could cut different bits of styrofoam in different size shapes to help you with a block. But that looks pretty nice to me. We're going to be able to test our theory of which one grew the most tissue pretty easily this way. So the next step, now that we've got the frags in position, is it's really important to put water top down onto the frags to set the glue. Because gravity is our friend here. I mean, you could have used a non-gel glue if you really wanted to, but I really try not to use the runny glues if I can help it. But this system is particularly important if using runnier glue, because the skin will kind of just cover the coral tissue if you plunge it. So really important, we're using like a turkey baster, kind of a coral feeder here. And I still haven't dipped them in any kind of a solution. So this whole time we're using the original water from the system where this colony has come from. And that's why I've got the rack over this tub to capture all my fallen runoff while I'm setting the glue. I actually got this trick from my great friends at Frags, which are soon becoming quite well known here, even internationally on the reefing scene. They would have taught me this years and years ago, and I never forget and I always appreciate, you know, people sharing their knowledge. This also helps prevent the coral from desiccation. You know, if you happen to have some lag time between placing the frags down and getting them back into the aquarium, just periodically putting some water over them will not only set the glue but help keep the coral happy too. So we've been using the baster for a couple of minutes now. I'm fairly certain that the glue has been set, so it's ready to remove the props and see if it's worked. So far so good. Yes. Excellent. These are looking nice. Do the side test. Upside down. They're ready to dip. So first of all, we have a bit of a conga line here. It's the iodine to prevent infection. Then there's a bath. Now if you don't have enough room, you could also use a baster one more time at this point. Particularly if you really did have acro eating flatworm, the baster is quite important. And then this is our Melafix at the end here. Acro eating flatworm can be quite a stubborn pest. They're very good at, you know, gripping on. So then we put it back in the bath and we're just going to set it here to get them ready for heading over to the system. Could have a frag rack under the water here as well. Visually inspecting them does really help identify whether they've got flatworm, but they are clear and quite elusive, so, you know, better to be safe than sorry, I say. And so we've got about 10 frags of each, the axial tips versus the side sausages, that we're going to put in our prop facility and be able to compare in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be able to share the results with you. Hopefully we've got some opinions on that. I love this CG, how good is that? Seriously, only been a couple minutes. These frags are looking awesome.
So that's our video for today. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe as well. We'll be putting out videos every week showing a new tank with new products. There's going to be lots in all the videos. I'm Cam the Fish Guy, and keep on reefing.